Bristol today with information and insight from all across the league. Expectations rising rapidly in New York as John Harbaugh has taken control of the Giants. Should Big Blue fans have high hopes for year one? Plus, the Texans have done some big spending to keep their defense together. But what about the other side of the ball? Is a new contract coming for C.J. Stroud? And we're looking west. We have every NFL Nation team reporter from the AFC and NFC West here in studio for the latest on two of the toughest divisions in the NFL. NFL Live off and running on this Tuesday, joined by Peter Schrager, Tim Hasselbeck, and ESPN NFL Nation Giants reporter Jordan Raanan, because Giants made some news today, earlier this afternoon. New on NFL Live, this from our Jeremy Fowler. Giants and defensive tackle DJ Reader closing in on a deal. 10-year veteran brings immediate help to New York's front. So, Jordan, why'd they do it?
Well, the Giants allowed 5.3 yards per carry last year. That was dead last in the NFL, right? And now you're talking about, even before they traded Dexter Lawrence, they said that they needed to add to that position. So then they trade Dexter Lawrence, and not only did the Giants sign Shelby Harris, the defensive lineman, Leki Fatu, another nose tackle, now they also add DJ Reader to the mix to help that run defense. And I'll tell you this about DJ Reader, right? There was one player that averaged, had a double team at a higher percentage than Dexter Lawrence last year. And I had a source tell me DJ Reader can still handle the double team. It was DJ Reader who had double teams and is still able to help against the run. He's getting up there in his age. He's over 30, but he's still an asset for them against the run.
Yeah, obviously a lot of changes up front for the Giants, but the biggest change is Harbaugh coming in as the head coach. So, what's the buzz around the team? How does it feel around the facility with Harbaugh running the show?
I spoke to a couple of players about this, and they feel like it's a fresh start, right? And yes, John Harbaugh is known as a hard coach. He's going to work them hard. But you're willing to accept that when the results haven't been good the other way around. And John Harbaugh has been honest about his expectations coming in. He's not like, okay, we're going to build up this program. This is a multi-year build. When he first came in, he said, we're going to trying to make the playoffs this year. That was an expectation for him. He said, we're not going out there to lose games. Our goal is to win games. And look, they have operated this offseason and added pieces and made that roster look like a John Harbaugh type roster. Look at the draft. You're talking about a massive right guard. He's going to play right guard, Francis Maui Noah. You're talking about linebacker / edge rusher who said he plays violent, right? You're adding a sixth round, a defensive tackle. You're adding big players all around. It has the shape of John Harbaugh, and he expects us to be a good team right away. And you know what helps? When you have that second-year quarterback, quarterback who you think is good.
Jackson Dart, who showed a lot of promise as a rookie. Tim, what are your expectations for Harbaugh's first year in New York?
I think they'll be an improved team. Part of the reason they'll be an improved team will be the second year for a quarterback who I think, will show good progress. And I also do think that Harbaugh, like a lot of coaches that have experienced success in the NFL with a prior organization, I think they'll try to, mimic that blueprint. And so, Jordan's referencing, some of the initial moves that, they're making under Harbaugh's leadership. Obviously, big guys in the front on both sides of the ball. You think of his time in Baltimore, certainly they were a team that played great defense. They ran the football, and, they had a quarterback that always had an added element, and so when it was Flacco, it was his ability to push the ball down the field. With Lamar, it was obviously an added element as a runner, and I think with Dart, there's kind of a combination of both of those things. So I think it'll take a little bit of time, but ultimately, I think that will end up being the vision for Harbaugh.
Yeah, and Tim, I'm fascinated by the brain trust that is going into this offense. And Jordan and Dan, you guys can speak to it as well. But it's not, here's a John Harbaugh offense, go, plug and play. It's Matt Nagy, who comes from Kansas City and, of course, has history as, the head coach of the Bears before that. It's Greg Roman, whose history and resume is quite decorated. It's Brian Callahan, who's been an NFL head coach, but also has worked with Matthew Stafford and Derek Carr and Peyton Manning in previous spots, and is the son of Bill Callahan, who's one of the great offensive line coaches in NFL history. So these are a lot of voices that are going to be playing a role in the formation of this offense. I don't know what it looks like. I also don't know what the running back situation is. I know they've got a bunch of guys that we think we like, but Jeremiah Love might have taken this to a different spot. They didn't draft a running back in the entire draft. Like, they don't have that guy either. So I know Scadaboo's coming back and Tyrone Tracy, and we got Motor Singletary and all these names, but before we just say 12 wins for the Giants, I want to see what the offense looks like, and that'll take form. And I also want to see what this running game looks like and how they perform with this great offensive line that they're now putting together.
Yeah, good point. It'll be interesting to see how it comes together with that sort of cocktail of high-ranking former head coaches on the offensive side of the ball. I guess something real quick?
One more thing that John Harbaugh has harped on. They lost 5 games last season where they were up double-digit points. They lost all these close games. He thinks the margins are small. This team's closer than people thought. That's what they believe inside that building.
We'll get to find out together. Sticking in the NFC East, the Dallas Cowboys were focused on defense this offseason. 5 of their first 6 picks in the draft were on defense, starting with safety Caleb Downs, who they traded up 1 spot to get. They also landed Rashawn Gary and Kobe Durant during the free agency period. That defense will be led by new defensive coordinator Christian Parker, who comes over from the Eagles. Head coach Brian Schottenheimer was talking about his first-round draft pick, Caleb Downs, after rookie camp. Listen to what he had to say.
The person elite, the intelligence elite. It's cool for me on the field to watch the ability for him to be going in any direction and how quickly he can get into balance. Why that matters is it matters with the ability to tackle in open field space, make plays on the ball, in coverage, time up blitzes. He's just got incredible lower body athleticism that when you watch him, he always gets into that same position where he's ready to strike with same foot, same shoulder, whether it's left foot forward, right foot forward.
Peter, things needed to change on defense in Dallas, and they obviously have. Expectations always high there. Do you think they've made enough changes on the defensive side of the ball for them to live up to those expectations?
I know the documentary aired on ESPN, so it looks like I'm doing this for Mickey Mouse, but I don't know that the pick is in. The documentary that got us inside the draft war room was outstanding. It was exquisite, and it gave us the conversations that not only Jerry Jones and Brian Schottenheimer are having, but Stephen Jones and Will McClay, and going into the maneuvering of the board to move back and then move up, and then what do we have to do to still get Caleb Downs? That was the player they circled, and they got him. And what a talent he is. You heard the word IQ. Talking to Cowboys sources, that's been the biggest thing that has stood out about Caleb Downs. We know about the physical presence. We know about the bloodlines. We know about what a talent he was at both Alabama and Ohio State. But in a first-year player, to be talked about as a coach on the field, then to mesh that with Christian Parker, who at 34 years old is the new defensive coordinator, who is a defensive backs guru who they plucked from Philadelphia, their arch rivals. I think that marriage is going to be maybe the most important thing for Dallas in this upcoming year. I've called them Super Bowl contenders, and Stephen A. Smith was laughing in my face at first take. But I will tell you, if they get the bare minimum out of those defense compared to what they got last year, and they just improve a little bit, they're Super Bowl contenders because that offense is high flying. And I think Caleb Downs and Christian Parker are the biggest additions to that team this offseason.
Yeah, I would agree with you, Peter. When you look at Downs, looks like he's going to be one of these guys that just can have an immediate impact. You hear Schottenheimer talking about, his ability and then where he'll end up playing in the defense. He's going to end up being around the football a lot. You think about Rashawn Gary and D. Winters. Like, they've done a good job, I believe, of improving the talent at the position. And you go back a year ago, right before the season, you trade away your best player. That's hard for any defense. So I think that there's going to be a natural improvement based on the talent level and some of the changes. And then you referenced it as well. If they're going to be as good as I think most people believe that they will be on the offensive side of the ball, you're going to be able to play with a lead at times. You're going to be able to play, alongside an offense that is scoring points. And so when you factor that in, I do think that the Dallas Cowboys, kind of in a unique way, after trading away a star player, have found themselves defensively in a pretty good position.
Dallas had the 4th most efficient offense in the NFL last season. So, yeah, if they could just get that defense up a little bit and keep playing offense like that, they could be scary. And we are joined, of course, by the host of the Schrager Hour podcast, Peter Schrager. What was your takeaway after talking with Zach Taylor about the Bengals' expectations for this season?
We did 45 minutes, Dan, and we went all through what the AFC North is going to look like now without Kevin Stefanski and without John Harbaugh and without Mike Tomlin, and how you look around, the team that might be the most stable and the one that's going into the most known situation is the Bengals. They return 11 starters on offense. And they added Boye Mafe and Brian Cook and Dexter Lawrence. And then, of course, they got the Cassius Howell as a rookie and Jonathan Allen. Like, they loaded up on defense. So they look at themselves in a position of, wait a second, 3 years, that seems like a long time. We should be able to compete. And gosh, Zach Taylor's so self-aware. He knows it. He knows that this team has not fulfilled expectations. And Joe Burrow's going to take the responsibility on offense, but now they've got the firepower on defense. And the expectations are high there internally. I thought Zach was very open and candid in our conversation. I urge everyone to go watch or listen to it. But when you look at all the turnover in the division, the last team standing that's kind of the same and only improved and got better, Cincinnati Bengals.
Yeah, kind of like what we were talking about with Dallas a little while ago. Great offense, need to improve that defense. Cincinnati, the worst pass rush in the NFL last season. We'll see if it gets better. To Houston now, where the Texans have been busy paying guys on the defensive side of the ball this offseason. They've locked in Will Anderson Jr., Azeez Al-Shire, and Danielle Hunter on contract extensions. Anderson got the big one. He'll be the highest paid non-quarterback in NFL history, making $50 million a year. He was the third pick in the draft in 2023. The second pick was C.J. Stroud, who's on the same team. We are joined now by DJ Bieneme, who covers the Houston Texans for ESPN's NFL Nation. So, with Anderson signed, what are the chances Stroud gets his big deal this offseason?
Undetermined. As of right now, as in late April, the Texans and Stroud haven't had much discussion regarding the contracts. But C.J. Stroud isn't really too much worried about that from people I've talked to close to him. He's just worried about being locked in and getting ready to be better than how he ended last season. He's made a few changes. One notably is his diet. He's got rid of sugary food. He's got rid of anything of that manner. Got rid of carbs. All he really drinks really is water and lean food. That's how he's been able to slim down and be slimmer. I know there's been a lot of talk on social media. So expect a slimmer Stroud, expecting a better CJ on the field.
Obviously, we need to see C.J. Stroud better than he was the last time we saw him in that playoff loss to New England. Tim, if you were the Texans, would you be in a hurry to give C.J. Stroud a top-of-the-market quarterback deal this offseason?
I would not. And, you just haven't seen progress. And so, I don't want to paint this picture that he's somehow gotten worse, because I don't believe that's the case. I do think expectations have changed. And, after a pretty good rookie season that, people thought that he would just continue to get better every year. But the truth is he just hasn't developed. He's thrown fewer touchdowns in, each year. He threw, 12 interceptions the second year, threw 8 this past year. I don't know that you can give a quarterback top of the market money when he's throwing, roughly 20 touchdowns and 10 interceptions a year. That's just not the type of production in a passing league that would warrant that. So unless he takes a big step forward in terms of production and consistency, I think you're on a wait and see, scenario. And I think there's going to be a lot of hesitancy to kind of understand whether or not, he's somebody that you can truly build around.
Sometimes you get a new offensive coordinator and you hit the ground running and it's like, wow, this was a match made in heaven. Where that wasn't the case with Nick Caley and CJ Stroud in their first year together. And DJ knows it far better than I do, being on the ground every day in Houston. But there were moments in that rookie season with Bobby Slowick, and then it dipped a little bit, and then Slowick gets fired, and they replace him with Caley, who's got the Belichick and McVay background. And you're like, okay, this is going to be this dynamic year in year 3, which is supposed to be the big leap year for this quarterback. And it didn't happen. The cautionary tale is Tua. The Dolphins gave Tua that massive contract, and it was like, all right, this is just what you do in the NFL. And then he didn't live up to it. I don't think C.J. Stroud belongs in the same conversation as that because there was health concerns with Tua. Right. I think the health stuff, and to DJ's point, he's in shape. He looks great. He's the leader. All the things you want to hear, except what Tim is saying is right. The production has dipped, and then despite getting to the second round of the playoffs in all of these years, in those moments, he hasn't been able to rise above. And I don't want to make that decision. That's a Nick Caserio decision. But gosh, you would like to see him and Nick Caley in year 2 really take off and make this decision easier.
They have time. They got the 5th-year option for 2027. You could always franchise a guy after that. So certainly more time for Houston to figure it out with C.J. Stroud. Still to come on NFL Live, Fernando. Our NFL Nation reporters are in town this week, so we want to keep it rolling and talk to the ones that cover the teams in the AFC West. We're going to start with the Los Angeles Chargers, who have really emphasized the offensive line. They drafted 4 offensive linemen this year. Last time they drafted that many in a single draft, their head coach, Jim Harbaugh, was the starting quarterback of the Bears. That was back in 1991. They did this after allowing the second most sacks in the league last year and changing offensive coordinators, which is probably another big part of it. This is Chris Rim, who covers the Chargers for us. ESPN, NFL Nation. Everybody's in town for meetings this week. We told these guys, hey, if you want to come on NFL Live, we can get you out of your meetings. They were all excited to do it. So expectations on the rise here for this Jim Harbaugh team entering his 3rd year there. What are you hearing about how Justin Herbert is meshing with Mike McDaniel and his system?
Well, everybody is excited. Mike McDaniel said specifically that he's geeked to work with Justin Herbert, right? And last year, Justin was the league's most pressured and hit quarterback. And the Chargers went through a revolving door at both tackle spots. And the offense kind of relied on Herbert throughout the season to kind of make hero plays. And McDaniel was on the sideline for one of those games. In Week 6 last season, the Chargers were on the 42-yard line. There was around 30 seconds left to go. It looked like the game was over. Justin avoided a sack attempt from edge rusher Jalen Phillips, hit Ladd McConkey, and the Chargers ended up winning that game. But the Chargers know they can't rely on that long term. And what McDaniel was trying to do in L.A. is make life easier for Herbert. He wants to get him quick passes, easy touchdowns, easy scores, and most importantly, keep Herbert upright. And that'll get helped with Joe Alt and Rashawn Slater back, and also with McDaniel, who appears to be focused on making life easy for Justin. Yeah,
it seems like he'll enjoy Justin, and Justin might enjoy Mike McDaniel. Tim, what do you think about the way Justin Herbert will fit in that system?
I think what Justin Herbert's going to like is the creativity in the run game. That, to me, is going to end up being the biggest difference. And that really is what McDaniel's expertise is. I think at times in Miami he got a little too cute with it. But, look, Harbaugh's going to want to be physical running the football. And I think that some of the creative things that they will do formationally is going to really benefit Justin Herbert. So I think it's more about the run game for Herbert, making him comfortable, than it will be anything in the passing game. I think just forcing people to defend you a certain way because of the way you're able to run the football creatively will create some opportunities in the passing attack.
Chargers trying to run down the Denver Broncos, who won the AFC West last year, and we're going to talk about them next. They were on the doorstep of the Super Bowl after bouncing back in 2025. Bo Nix, their quarterback, led the NFL in game-winning drives. Broncos tied a franchise record with 14 wins. They didn't have Nix in the AFC Championship game where they lost to the Patriots. Their draft wasn't very exciting. They had just 1 pick in the first 3 rounds, which was the fewest of any team. That, of course, partially because they traded their first-round pick for Jalen Waddle. Jeff Legwold covers the Denver Broncos for us at ESPN. So, Jeff, first of all, what's the latest on Nix and his recovery from that injury?
Well, Dan, they're the only team in the league, I believe, that's going to have all of its off-season workouts in June, all OTAs, minicamp, and he is not expected to participate in the 11-on-11 work in any way. There's been some rumblings he may do limited things, but I do not expect to see him do anything of significance until training camp.
Even without him, they were still within 3 points of the Patriots in that game. They were that close to the Super Bowl, which you must really eat at Sean Payton. So what can you share with us in terms of their plans to get even further this year?
Yeah, well, they obviously liked the team they had. He believed it was a Super Bowl team last year, and what they do in the offseason? Well, they had 21 players who were unrestricted, restricted, or exclusive rights free agents. They re-signed 17 of them. I've never seen anything like it in all my years. Their significant move, trade for Jalen Waddle. They believe that's the one thing offensively they could not punish defenses down the field. They were near the bottom of the league in 3-and-outs, 29th in the league, and drives that ended in 3-and-outs. Very low impact at the tight end position, so they're looking to push the ball down the field some and punish nickel defenses in the middle of the field.
Peter, what more can you share with us on their expectations for Jalen Waddle in Denver?
I'm going to give some flowers to Jeff here because I polled a lot of different NFL GMs and coaches after the draft and said, whose big boards do you guys actually look at as far as trying to rank? It says Jeff Legwold is one of the top ones. We always have that in our hands. And I use that as a segue because they traded that first-round pick and got Jalen Waddle. One of the main reasons why was they were looking at this wide receiver draft class, and they said at the back half of the first round, we don't think Carnell Tate's going to be there. We don't anticipate Jordan Tyson going to be there. Maybe Cooper is going to be there if we're doing it in the late 20s. Maybe he ended up being there. But all three of those guys, we'll put Jalen Waddle in that conversation. And if we can exchange that pick for Jalen Waddle, that makes us all the better, and it makes us better now. So I look at their wide receivers room, and it's almost like you got a starting five in basketball where you got a speedster like Mims, you got another speedster like Jalen Waddle. Those could be your guards. Then you got the bodies like Sutton and Pat Bryant, and then you go down the list with all the different guys that can all play different roles. That's what they're excited about. And in Jalen Waddle, they have a first-round pick that they feel almost better than if they had drafted one and got one that was right out of college.
Can you tell Peter's excited about the Knicks being back in the playoffs and maybe making a run? No question about it. With the basketball.
I was fired up about your big board, Jeff. That's what I was fired up about.
Broncos said Jeff Legwold doesn't like any of the wide receivers down there at the end of the first round. Neither do we. Let's trade our pick for a known quantity. To Las Vegas now, where the Raiders added quarterback Fernando Mendoza with the #1 overall pick in this year's draft. They also signed veteran Kirk Cousins, who could be their starter while they take time to get Mendoza ready to go at the pro level. Clint Kubiak set to be the Raiders' 6th different head coach in the last 6 seasons. We're very happy that Ryan McFadden covers the Raiders for us here at ESPN. So, you know, what Fernando Mendoza's the story there, right? You were at the rookie minicamp last weekend. What were your impressions of what you saw?
Yeah, Mendoza mania is in full effect here in Las Vegas. One thing that stands out to Mendoza is that he's really embraced the leadership role as the quarterback of the team during practice. He was breaking the team out of the huddle, during the night before practice, on the first night, even the night before the second practice. He's having walkthroughs during the team hotel where he's listen, because he's trying to get better at learning playing under center. So during those walkthroughs, he took 25 to 50 snaps under center with each offensive lineman and participant during rookie minicamp. So yeah, he's trying to pick up the pace in terms of learning the Raiders offense and Kubiak's scheme, as well as trying to fully acclimate himself as a leader on the team.
You're saying he's trying to look at what Kirk Cousins does on film, right, and mirror some of that?
Oh, yeah, most definitely. Now, Mendoza has been studying Kirk Cousins since he was in college because that was one of the players that he saw out people from the outside compare him to. So with that said, he's been studying his film for quite a bit, and now he's in the building. He has all the cut up where he's studying his footwork and how Kirk Cousins operate under center, as well as Sam Darnold during his tape with the Seattle Seahawks.
Tim, Cousins gives them an option, obviously, if they decide Mendoza isn't ready by week 1. Should he start right away? What would you do?
I don't think he needs to start right away. I think there will be some benefit to watching someone like Cousins, who is a master at, that offense. At the same time, I do think it's easier. In fact, I know it's easier to get better doing something rather than watching someone do it. So I would expect him to take over at some point in his rookie season. I don't think it has to be week 1.
All right. Brian McFadden, thanks very much. We're going to talk now about the Kansas City Chiefs, who revamped their running back room with Super Bowl MVP Kenneth Walker on a big free agent deal. They also traded up into the top 10 of the draft to select cornerback Mansour Delane after they lost their 2 starting corners to the Rams. Both went to the Rams, which is odd. Chiefs general manager Brett Veach spoke earlier this week on the radio about where quarterback Patrick Mahomes is in his rehab from that knee injury.
He's way ahead of schedule. I think the biggest challenge that we're going to have is protecting him against himself, because I'm sure when we get to St. Joe, Missouri for training camp, he's going to want to be full go, but we're going to have to hold him back a little. And again, I don't want to put a timetable on it, but I think you guys know the type of person and the competitor Pat is. And, I would just say we're in a really good place right now.
Our Chiefs reporter Nate Taylor joins the show. You're on the ground there in Kansas City. You hear what Veach is saying. You heard what Andy Reid said this weekend about Patrick Mahomes. Is he ahead of schedule? What are the expectations there?
Yes, he's very ahead of schedule, Dan, and that's what makes this offseason so exciting for Kansas City. Not only building the offense with a guy like Kenneth Walker, the reigning Super Bowl MVP, but now they actually anticipate Patrick Mahomes taking reps in OTAs later this month. And so that means, hey, it's offense on air to start. Then we get offense on defense. And the hope is that Mahomes can be ready to take on even more responsibility, more reps for training camp, like Brett Veach said in the clip. So for Kansas City, they're going to have to be precautious. They're going to have to be a little bit, limiting Patrick Mahomes and what he does, because they also need to get Justin Fields some reps in this offense too as the expected backup quarterback. But for right now, the offseason has gone really well for Patrick Mahomes because he's not only been training, but he's been rehabbing just about every day, which has given him the chance to really have a joyful moment later this month when he is back in the huddle with his teammates. I can't imagine how excited he's going to be when he's actually on the field doing OTA sort of reps with the rest of his teammates.
All right, so that's all sounds very encouraging, Peter. So let's live in a world where Patrick Mahomes bounces back and he's ready to go and he's his old self. What are your expectations for that Kansas City offense this year?
I think Nate's on it in that they're going to have to kind of play governor to how much they can use him. They always play Patrick Mahomes in the preseason. They always get that moment where the fans can see him, and he usually plays 2 quarters. I would imagine it's a conversation not only in St. Joe's, but it's also before that preseason game. Like, maybe this is the year we don't do that, and we just kind of ease into things. I will say this. The Chiefs made their roster very evident when they drafted 4 defensive players with their first 4 draft picks, all at 4 different positions. It sounds like the Jimmies and Joes on offense, they feel comfortable with. It was the defensive guys that they felt they needed to add there. So their offense is good. And I think Nate will add on this. After this last couple of days of what they had going on, there is a little buzz there already about their day 3 pick, Emmett Johnson, the running back out of Nebraska. So whereas you lose Isaiah Pacheco, you also pick up a new day 3 guy who led the nation in yards per scrimmage per game. Nate, maybe you can add to that, but Emmett Johnson was the talk after that rookie minicamp.
He is the player that got a lot of receptions in rookie minicamp, showed a lot of speed, shows an ability to get yards after the catch as well. So he could easily be able to find himself a role as a rookie alongside Kenneth Walker. I know they have DeMarcado as well in the running back room. So it's an overall different change from the running back position moving forward. And again, all that should take less of the burden off Patrick Mahomes, especially if he's going to be on the field like he hopes for week 1 to lead that Chiefs offense.
Right, Chiefs trying to build up the running game to make life easier on Patrick. Nate Taylor, thanks very much. The defending Super Bowl champion Seattle Seahawks. They lost some key pieces on defense this offseason, as well as Super Bowl MVP running back Kenneth Walker. But they drafted Notre Dame running back Jadarian Price in the first round. And with Clint Kubiak off to coach the Raiders, they have a new offensive coordinator in Brian Fleury. ESPN Seahawks reporter Brady Henderson joins the show. Brady, first of all, Seattle made some news today. What can you tell us?
Yeah, Dan, they signed Dante Fowler Jr., the veteran edge rusher, and he is their replacement for Boye Mafe. And of all the players they lost in free agency, Mafe was the one guy that they had yet to replace. Now, they brought Fowler in for a visit before the draft, and then they did not draft an edge rusher with any of their 8 picks, knowing that they didn't have to force a pick there, knowing that they had Fowler as an option in their back pocket. He's got a connection to defensive coordinator Adam Dirty, who coached him in both Dallas and in Atlanta.
All right, so he knows a little bit about the scheme they want to run and should fit well. You have a story up on ESPN.com about the Seahawks draft. What can you share with us about that?
Yeah, I talked to several people inside the draft room, and one of the nuggets that did not make it into the story was that they had a 3rd-round grade on Ty Simpson. And as you know, Dan, sometimes teams will kind of squirm and get nervous when a team in their division drafts a player. I can tell you this was not the case with the Seahawks and Ty Simpson. And let's zoom out a little bit here and compare these teams side by side. They were neck and neck last season as the 2 best teams in the NFL. Their 2 regular season meetings decided by a combined 3 points. The NFC Championship game also came down to the wire. Well, the Seahawks, as you mentioned, took some hits in free agency with Kobe Bryant, Ken Walker III, Rick Woolen, Boye Mafe. The Rams, meanwhile, really beefed up their secondary with Trent McDuffie and Jalen Watson, and you could clearly make an argument that the Rams might have overtaken them in terms of talent. And that's why I say I don't think the Seahawks were at all disappointed to see the Rams take a player that's probably not going to help them out much this season.
With the 13th pick, I don't doubt it. Tim, what did you think of what the Seahawks did in the draft?
Well, I like the decision to draft Price in the first round. You know, when you look at their running back situation, it's kind of remarkable to think that there's a chance they could actually end up improving, even though they let the Super Bowl MVP walk. And I say that because when you look at how Seattle ran the football during the regular season last year, it really wasn't great. And I think there were times you could easily say that Charbonnet was kind of the more reliable or better back. He certainly was the more explosive back at times. And so with Charbonnet's injury, I think in some ways they were, I don't say forced, but it just made a lot of sense to go with Price in the first round. I think Price ends up being the day one starter, and I think he ends up being a guy that touches the ball maybe 15 times a game and really have an impact on their offense.
All right, so we'll see how that Seattle running game, to your point, it wasn't great until it had to be in the postseason. Brady, you mentioned the LA Rams. We're going to talk about them next. They lost to the Seahawks in the NFC title game. Matthew Stafford, their quarterback, won his first MVP. So what did they do? They went and drafted a quarterback in the first round in Ty Simpson. That's the first time a team drafted a first-round quarterback the year after their quarterback won MVP since the 1967 Packers, who had Bart Starr and drafted Don Horn in the ensuing draft. Of course, we all remember the Don Horn era in Green Bay very well. Our Rams reporter, Sarah Barshop, joins the show. Sarah, the big move from day one of the draft was, of course, Ty Simpson. What is the plan with him and Matthew Stafford?
So right after the Rams drafted Ty Simpson, I asked Sean McVay, is he going to back up Matthew Stafford next year? And he said, well, Simpson's going to compete with Stetson Bennett, who was a fourth-round pick in 2023. And there were some more follow-ups about whether he thought he could do that role, and he brought up Jimmy Garoppolo. And when I talk about why the backup quarterback position is so important to this Rams team, I'm going to take you back more than a year ago to the start of last offseason. Matthew Stafford, Sean McVay, members of the Rams medical and strength staff sat down, and they discussed how they could best get Stafford ready for the start of his 17th NFL season. That looked like more time at home during the first phase of OTAs, more time with his family, a place where he has a full gym, has everything he needs to do his job. And Sean McVay said it helped him avoid some of the maybe monotonous work that he would have otherwise done at the facility. Still allowed him to throw when he needed to with his teammates. And so after the draft, I asked McVay, what did you guys learn about that in a season where your quarterback won MVP? Right. And he said, we plan to take a very similar approach. And that's why Ty Simpson is so important. Jimmy Garoppolo played a big role, of course. Matthew Stafford also not planned, missed a lot of training camp with that back injury. And so they have to figure out who is that player who can take some of those reps, even if the Rams do take a modified approach during training camp.
Peter?
I think Sarah's nailing it. The importance of Jimmy Garoppolo last year cannot be overstated. And the fact that they could put it on Jimmy and say, hey, take us against the Cowboys in joint practices and you lead the way and you get this offense going and you be the one to help Devontae Adams figure out this offense a little bit and get him up to speed. It was so huge. So when Jimmy says he's contemplating retirement and he's not coming back to the Rams, which is what we think is now, and that he's not going to the Cardinals, where I was always under the impression Mike LaFleur could lure him as a starter, and he said, no, I'm going to take this time, it makes Ty Simpson or Stetson Bennett all the more important. I also would say this, and Sarah's there every day, she knows, that there is a bit of a threading of the needle here as far as the personalities go. All last offseason, going into the draft and going into free agency, was like, where are we at with Stafford? They're going to have to do that again, maybe, and just make sure that everyone is secure in their place and that, hey, Stafford, is it year to year or is this long term? At the very least, we all have to be comfortable with the selection of Ty Simpson and his place in this room.
Certainly counting on the coaching staff to thread that needle. Of course, the Rams probably trust their coaching staff as much as any team in the league. Go back a couple weeks before the draft, the team a lot of people thought would end up with Ty Simpson was the Arizona Cardinals, especially after they moved on from quarterback Kyler Murray. But instead, they selected Notre Dame running back Jeremiah Love with the 3rd overall pick. They did take Carson Beck in the 3rd round and added Gardner Minshew in free agency. So that's pretty much how the quarterback room looks, along with Jacoby Brissett for rookie head coach Mike LaFleur. Josh Weinfuss covers the Arizona Cardinals for us here at ESPN. Josh, what are you hearing about their plan at quarterback?
Yeah, Dan, I've been told that as of now, Jacoby Brissett is QB1, despite him holding out for a new contract. A source told me that he's been made aware of that and that discussions between the team and Brissett are ongoing, just like Brissett's holdout. That leaves Minshew as quarterback 2. And then the plan for a rookie, Carson Beck, who Arizona drafted in the 3rd round, is for him to sit and watch and learn, unless he outplays some of the quarterbacks during camp. And if that happens, there's a chance he could see the field earlier rather than later.
Certainly seems like there's at least going to be an opportunity for him to show something. Tim, what should they do?
I think they're going to go with Brissett. I anticipate Brissett being there. There aren't many other options than ended up, than showing up. And I think he'll be the starter. I think Minshew's there for a reason because of, his background and experience. I think they'll feel comfortable playing him. And so I actually think the path to the field really isn't that easy for Beck. And so I think it'll go in that order. There's a chance based on their struggles, if that we could end up seeing all three at some point during the season. But I think that's the way it'll go. And it kind of makes me feel like the Cardinals decided to basically just punt on addressing quarterback meaningfully, in this process with an anticipation that they'll do it a year from now.
Playing in a team that had 3 playoff teams last year, obviously uphill climb for Arizona. Still ahead, do the 49ers have enough offensive firepower?